Hello and welcome to the Merley Players podcast. My name is Jordan Vanderbeak. I'm player one. To my left is player two, my good friend Vicente McPeek.
aka Worf Jostar, founder of Freedomonia, competitive fighting crew here in the Bay Area. Always getting, I don't know, kind of top 8, top 3 in different tournaments. But yeah.
Making sure to build up your street cred out there with all the gamers.
Hell yeah. Some people, like, when they hear Freedomonia, they think we're free, but we're not. And, I mean, we're kind of known. Only person's known is, like, Crisis. Because that guy's a killer. Killing tons of people. Best of NorCal. But anyways, we're talking here about our show, and today's episode is why are we doing this show, Jordan?
Yeah, well, more aptly and more appropriately, why is narrative important, and why is narrative important to be considered in a context of video games, and are video games a narrative medium? Do you have any opening thoughts?
I think narrative is very important. Fiction is definitely important in video games. We came a long way from, Super Mario Brothers. Oh, your princess in another castle. Just doing the mechanics, jump, throw those shells, and then now we're having issues of like genocide. We're having issues of what does it take to be more human, and I feel like that's a really big step, and a lot of people don't see the games as a big step into storytelling.
You know, there are some games I feel that are pushing certain narrative envelopes, but on the same token, sometimes in a lot of contemporary video games, I feel the questions that are being asked are a little bit oversimplified and a little bit more shallow than they're taken to be. I mean, let's take Gears of War, for example, which is, I mean, I love that game. Like, I love that game. We play it
Horde
all
mode.
the time. Horde mode, yeah.
Insane.
Horde mode. Never, ever, ever win. It's not possible with two people. But in the story mode, there are moments where we're talking Gears of War 3 here. In 1 and 2, there were also moments of characterization, but it's been a while since we played those.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there are moments of characterization that begin to approach on something deep and interesting, but they're not given the full complexity they could have. For example, should we spoil rest in peace Dom Santiago?
I think by now
People know. Yeah. There's a moment where a character who's grieving about the loss of his wife, he goes and has this incredibly heroic moment of suicide and sacrificing himself for his buddies. But that in itself is not really a complicated showing of grief. He comes back to the hometown where his wife is buried. He lays his cog tag, which is their equivalent of the dog tag. Yeah. He lays it on her grave, and in the months since she's been dead, he's become a hermit. But grief is so much more complicated than that, especially grief of a close one. I mean, it differs from person to person, of course, but I mean, let's take, for example, there was a book that came out a couple of years ago by Joan Didion, who's she's a journalist whose husband had passed away just before she wrote that book.
Okay.
And her daughter was in a coma when she was writing that book. And it's called The Year of Magical Thinking, in which she documents the sudden loss of much of her capacity for rational thought because of her husband's death. She has moments where she concretely realizes she doesn't want to throw away his shoes. She doesn't want to donate his shoes to charity because she thinks that he might come back and he'll need shoes when he comes back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Gears of War could have explored more of the emotion. But y'all also got to realize Gears of War, it's wartime and they're about to die. Locust, Lambent, new enemy. I see what you're saying. I think Dominic, through his actions, just being a hermit with the vegetables in level 1, not shaving his beard, not caring, and then when he goes to his wife's grave, and said, basically he's only there to help his brother, which is, the main character, Marcus. I think you're right. They should have done it, but I think it's a good step that Epic Games actually did this, because in Gears of War 1 and 2, there's like little to none. And one of my favorite parts, and I think you know my favorite part, is Cole when he goes in and he sees like cardboard cutout, and it's kind of like, you know, it's like the Wheaties version of a sponsor, you know, and he's there and he looks at himself, and everyone's like, you know, trying to find food in this, you know, abandoned grocery store, and then he just stares and it says, "Do you ever?" I think he said, "Do you ever have the feeling that you're already dead?" And I was like, "Wow, that it made me think." Because Cole's whole life is thrashball, aka football, and the war in the Gears of War universe goes on for so long, he doesn't have time to do his passion for his love of the game. And then when he looks at himself, he kind of like has a reflection of like how he came to be. You know, is he dead? And then that one part when he gets a flashback when there's a bomb and he's doing like he's just like dodging, tackling the locusts. And he's like, "I still got it, baby. I still got it." Right there, I don't know. That was a man tier moment.
That was pretty good, and having him as a character be reacted to by his surroundings kind of adds more depth to this whole thrashball persona he had in the earlier games, where he's the hype man. He's making sure everybody's morale isn't lowered by going, "Woo, baby, yeah,
yeah."
But having the people around him concretely react to who he was, and having him understand and recognize that there's a distance between who he was and who he is now, adds a definite complexity to his character. But on the same token, I feel it kind of
kind of what? What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking that's actually a good moment of complexity. Because we have a character recognize the distance between who he was and who he is now, even if it's only a perceived distance, even if it's viewed through a filter of sentimentality he has surrounding him playing. And it definitely has an effect and an emotional resonance, because, I mean, we see this character as human for the first time.
Yeah, I think you're right. The whole time, he is hype man. There's not a moment where he kind of like shows his inner self. It's kind of like, you know, how if a man gets hurt and you know he got hurt, but he's not crying and he's just like, "Oh yeah, it didn't hurt," but then you're like, "Damn, that hurt. You just got kicked in the balls." But like for like Cole, the whole time he's like that. He's like, "War? Nah, man, war's fun. You know, woo, baby, touchdown." And then that one part, there's no more games. His mask is removed. He is now who he was. Like, he sees the end of who he was, and he has to come to realize that. But I mean, I need to ask you this question, Jordan. Do you think players out there are able to see this, or do you think they're just, oh, guns, shoot, death?
I personally believe that there are definitely players out there who are gun, shoot, fun, yeah. But there's also players out there who, I mean, like myself, who, I mean, I play more video games than I'd like to admit at this point. I'm not gonna lie, I play a good amount of video games. But I really, the games that stick with me are the ones where I'm able to forge an emotional connection with the characters in a way that I'm able to forge an emotional connection with characters in the fiction that I read. In that I recognize that these characters are the result of people looking very deeply at their own humanity and trying to imbue some of that humanity, or trying to bestow some of that humanity onto their characters through a constant, quiet, hard work through drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts, and a struggle to take these questions that have no answers and try to explore them in a manner that's deeper. Like, there's the question of fame with Cole, and that begins to go into something deep. But in Gears of War, I feel they just start to go into something deep. They come a little bit short. That's not to say that it's not a push in the positive direction. It's not to say it's like a push, it falls short or anything. It's just that these moments aren't quite enough for me to love the characters beyond the character design and their personal character quirks. Let's take a quick break.
Okay, yeah, let's take a quick break.